could you start just by introducing yourself and
Sure.
tell us, who you are and what you do?
I'm Virginia Watson, and I make my living selling clothes at Renaissance festivals. I do two different shows on the East Coast, and I specialize in Irish and Scottish wear for men, women, and children that are medieval and Renaissance in time period.
And can you give us the name of your company, please?
It's Wolfstone Kilt Company.
Now, when was Wolfstone Kemp? Excuse me. Did you begin working for someone else, or did you start into the business by creating Wolfstone Kemp?
No, actually, I started this myself, and my husband and I had another company first, which we still have, about 10 years before we started that. And we used to do living history reenactments, and I would make clothes for him and I. And my friends liked the clothes, so then I started making clothes for them. And it kind of expanded from making clothes for my friends to making clothes for the public. So it kind of snowballed like that. Yeah.
So, I mean, it seems kind of like a niche market. I mean, how did you get into making clothes for the public?
Really just demand. People wanted me to do, they would see what I did for my friends, and so friends would say, well, could you make this for so-and-so? And it evolved to the point where I had this great idea to make great kilts, like on the shelf, and actually took a course from a guy who is a world renowned, respected historian on kilts. And so I took this course on how to do it, and I was the first person ever to make great kilts, like on the shelf, ready to go, put the guy in a kilt, and out he goes. So it started like that, and this building that we're in now, the first building I had here was very rickety. The top part was condemned. I used to sit in the back and be on a card table with a little portable sewing machine and sew in the back while I had a girlfriend who would stand up front and sell for me. So I went from that to all of this.
Are you telling me that you make this stuff yourself?
Oh, yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about your process?
Sure. It starts out first with the idea. So I'll have an idea that's inspired often by fabric, or just an idea, something that I know people need and want, that they have in clothing that's not being fulfilled. And I'll go, okay, well, I've got this great idea. So I'll sketch it out, and then I'll make the thing in muslin first, like in a real cheap cotton, and fit that. And then once I get that to a point where I like it, then I make the pattern and I grade the pattern, which just means making it bigger and smaller, just taking out the base size and expanding it. And then when I get to that point, then I go to my head seamstress, because I have 6 different women that sew for me, and it's a cottage industry, so they sew at their studios, their homes. Most of them are moms with children, so it works out really nice for them, because that way they can make money and still be at home with their children. And I go to my head girl and go over what I want to have done. And then for my part, I used to make everything. Now I really don't have time to make everything anymore. My duties have expanded. But the one job I will never not do is as designer, and then buying all the fabric and making the patterns and stuff like that. Yeah.
So does that include the menswear and the women's wear?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so can you talk? I mean, I know that there's a lot of word going around about what goes into a kilt. You know, so many yards of wool. Can you talk a little bit about what goes into a kilt?
Sure. Well, the history of the kilt was it came from the Celts, and the people where its recorded history really are the Scots, and they were dirt poor. They had no money. The English took away pretty much everything. They had nothing. I mean, we're talking about really poor people. So they'd have a piece of fabric, and you got to think this is cold place, cold and wet, often very rainy, that they would have as a blanket, or they could use it as a tent, and then to wear it, they would pleat it. They would just make these little pleats to get it small enough so they could wrap it around their waist. And that was their wear. Their Scottish clothing was all very practical. Everything did like double duty. You'd almost compare it to a sari. And so eventually it evolved as time went on into a military item, which it is now. The modern kilt really I asked a mill director one time when I was in Scotland, how did this come about? And he said that the Scots went south to England for the Industrial Revolution to get work, and that they had these long, beautiful, flowing gray kilts, and they were afraid the sleeves and such would get caught in the machinery, and so they had a tailor come and tidy them up, and it kind of turned it into this shorter kilt, what they call a wee kilt, which eventually then went into the military. Now it's a military item, and that's where all the rules and exact specifications. But originally it was just one big piece of fabric. That initially there's this idea that great kilts have to be 8 yards long. They couldn't be. If you think about 8 yards, that's like 24 feet of fabric around your waist. Okay, so what it was is the looms were only 28 inches wide then, so they would loom up 8 yards, cut it in half, stitch it together, so it would be wide enough so they could pleat it and then wear it as a gray kilt. So it was really about 4 yards, 3.5 to 4 yards originally.
So,
Oh, hold on one
Yeah.
second. Sorry.
Sure.
Resetting.